You're listening to The Creative Imposter. I'm producer, host, and editor Andrea Klunder, and this is the beginning of a very special series on the show that I am calling Creativity and Media as Resistance. This series was partly inspired by today's guests, Chicago-based singers Wendy Parman and Fink, who are hosting a concert this coming Sunday, June 29th, called 50 Shades of Blue, The Resistance Sings, featuring an impressive roster of local talent in support of a nonprofit organization called Democracy Forward. You'll hear more about that from Wendy and Sue in just a moment, but this is also a special series because I am hosting these conversations live on video via LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. The links to all three of those channels and upcoming live stream conversations are in the show notes in the episode description in your app for this episode. So if you want to join us live, put Thursdays at 3 p.m. Central Time in your calendar, or if you want to see our bright shining faces in the replay, head to YouTube or LinkedIn. As of this moment, I've hosted 3 Creativity and Media as Resistance conversations on video, and the other 2 will soon be here in this feed as audio. But if you want to hear them sooner, go to YouTube or LinkedIn. Jen Briney, the host of Congressional Dish, one of my most essential podcasts right now as a listener, and I talked about what you can do right now, call Congress, to make a difference in the outcome of the big, beautiful bill that's being kicked around. And we didn't talk about Iran, but you should probably make your voice heard about that issue too while you're at it. Of course, calling Congress and attending protests are not the only ways that you can show your resistance to the social, cultural, political moment that we are in. And that's what this series is designed to illuminate. I launched it because talking to people who are using creativity to do their part is what I needed to help me get out of a state of doom and gloom. Now, if you're feeling like, but Andrea, I've been resisting and now I'm just exhausted, then you need my conversation with therapist and executive resilience strategist Lisa Lackey. Lisa and I were talking about how to fill your cup so that you can keep going. And I know this is short notice, or maybe the date has even already passed, but if you are listening to this before Thursday, June 26th, there may still be time to join Lisa's community circle called The Second Knowing. It's intended for women 40 plus who are, quote, in the quiet middle of everything, end quote. Lisa says the circle is for you if you've built a good life, but still feel unsettled. You're navigating menopause, divorce, recoupling, caregiving, coming out, career shifts, or other transitions. You want to reconnect with your body, your spirit, your sacred rhythm. You're done holding it all and ready to be held. Well, it sounds awesome to me, and I am going to be there. There's details, of course, in the show notes for this episode as well. And if you are already thinking, you know what, I'm not in Chicago, or it's after Sunday, June 29th, so I can't attend Wendy and Sue's show, 50 Shades of Blue, The Resistance Sings, I encourage you to keep listening to this episode because even though you may not be able to attend this concert, it may just inspire you to come up with some ideas of your own for how you can join us in this resistance in powerful, sustainable, creative ways. And hey, if you already are showing your resistance through creativity and/or media, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a detailed email or voice memo to andrea@thecreativeimposter.com, and maybe I'll share it on a future episode. P.S. If that creativity and media might happen to do with podcasting, meaning if you are currently podcasting or even dreaming of podcasting, I have a secret podcast feed called the Podcast Envy Exclusive, just for you. It's free to sign up and then add it to your podcast app of choice. Curious? Get the exclusive. The link is in your show notes. All right. Ready? Here's my conversation with Wendy Parman and Sue Fink. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Creative Imposter Live, our special series, Creativity and Media as Resistance. And today I have with me two guests, not just one, but two, Sue Fink and Wendy Parman, who are both fantastic singers, songwriters, performers extraordinaire in Chicago, which is where I am. So we're all coming to you from Chicago. And I wanted to invite Sue and Wendy on because they have launched a performance initiative called 50 Shades of Blue. I have to be very careful when I say that because I need to make sure I'm saying the right color. 50 Shades of Blue, The Resistance Sings, which is an upcoming concert Sunday, June 29th at Chief O'Neill's in Chicago, benefiting a nonprofit organization called Democracy Forward. That's a lot of information. But Sue, Wendy, thank you so much for joining me. And I'd love to hear how this collaboration came to be.
Well, Wendy, you should go first because you thought of it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. How did it? I mean, we had kicked around I think each of us separately in conversation said, "Oh, we should do something," beyond just the going to protests and making calls and writing emails and this and that, But also, I always feel better when I do something that's in my wheelhouse, so to speak, which is to sing or perform. And then I think maybe I asked you, Sue.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because I love to do this. I've done this before for other events. Superstorm Sandy, when that was going on. During COVID, we had Folkies Feed the Folks, where it was an online event, and we donated it all to what was formerly known as the Lakeview Pantry. And after 47, when he just became 45, I still can't say his name, but we had a show called Hymns by Hers, where we just put positive music into I just think it's not only for us as the performers who want to do something. And anytime you ask a performer, do you want to do this? We're doing a benefit for they're like, yes, because everybody wants to do something. And I think audiences also are looking for opportunities that they can partake in, feel a part of, feel that they're doing something other than just stressing. So I was like, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, the performers coming together piece of it. So the show is not just Sue and Wendy performing, which would be great in and of itself.
I mean,
could have I've been to those shows before.
Would have been a lot easier.
Tell me, once you had this idea, how did you go about putting the word out? How did you sort of select and curate performers who wanted to be a part of it? Tell me a little bit about the lineup.
I mean, because Wendy's more in the cabaret world as far as performers, and I'm more in the folk world. So I just wrote down a list of names, and I contacted the first 10 names on my list, and everybody said yes. And then Wendy, did probably.
Well, yeah. I mean, I really thought about who I knew that I felt was suitable to this kind of a particular show, because my idea was to do a protest show. It's not just like, let's all get together and sing whatever song we want.
Right.
And raise money. It's no, let's complain about what's going on. Not just complain, but of course, lift people up or state what we feel or really protest or whatever that means to individual artists.
Right.
And so, some people aren't as, into that as others in their work, certainly. So I tried to think of, a little bit from the cabaret community, a few of my own students, a few people that I know from other just musical and voice teachery things. And I wanted to also make sure that we had a diverse group of people who were going to bring in different kinds of music and, represent the community. That was important to me too. So I reached out to some people who are more R&B soul singers, and we have a great jazz guy. We have a Latina singer who I really love. We have some interesting mix of music too that I think is going to make it a really fun, eclectic show. It's going to be good.
Yeah. And I should have said that too. I mean, because like some people, this would not necessarily be their theme. So trying to get people that would want this theme. And there's going to be some songs that are probably angry, and some songs that'll be sad, and some songs that'll be thoughtful, and some songs there's going to be all different styles. And we have a storyteller who Wendy and I both met at a storytelling event. Oh, and I got to hear her tell this particular story that she's going to tell. And it's very, very moving. And we're very excited about that.
And appropriate.
Very appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned inviting people who have something to say or have a particular perspective. You mentioned complaining about the things / supporting and bringing awareness / lifting each other up. And I'm curious, you have the word resistance in the name of the show. I put it in the name of this particular podcast series. And that word can mean a lot of things to different people. It brings up different ideas. At the risk of taking the rest of this episode to make a bullet-pointed list of all the things, what are the things that are top of mind? Like, what, for each of you, what are you resisting against? Like, what does that bring up for you?
Oh my God. Yeah. I am mostly resisting lies. The truth is being buried by lies. People are trying to make truth on the same level as lies. And it's not. Truth, once heard or seen, cannot be unheard or unseen. It's strong. And we have to say it. We have to sing it. We have to keep it going because people are trying to trample it right now. And so that is the main thing that I am resisting. Trying to gut our Constitution and say that it's okay. It's not okay. So we cannot accept that. We cannot accept that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, I mean, I think the thing that maybe infuriates me the most or gets me the most cranked about it all is everything. But yeah, I think that at least with the bedrock of our nation, what we believe in, even though it's been deeply flawed in its execution, we have to say that. But our country was based in a constitution and in the idea of democracy and freedom. And again, flawed, hasn't always come through, but going completely against everything that we all believe our country stands for and tearing that down, and which is really what's happening, then that's the scariest part, because everything else is stemming from that. If you can't, get due process, then we're all vulnerable and, et cetera. So all of the things that are happening threaten, I think, everything that I feel our country stands for. And, if anything, we should be trying to improve that, what democracy is and what freedom is, not have it, disappear and we're all going to become serfs. Because the other thing is this is a giant class war, really. That's a huge aspect of this that nobody wants to really talk about that much, or certainly on the other side, they don't. So yeah, if we lose that, I feel like we've kind of lost everything. I don't know what there is on the other side of that, but chaos or something.
And when did diversity, equity, and inclusion become a dirty word? Dirty words. I mean, that's what we're aiming for. That's what we're working towards. That's what we've been working towards. And then it's like ants who've built this little anthill, and all of a sudden some giant fingers coming down and smushing it. And like, all the ants have to start over back at the beginning, but we're not ants. We're people who have worked at this, and no giant finger is going to come down and smush us. That's my slogan.
Down with giant fingers.
Now we have an episode title. No giant finger is going to come down and smush us.
I love that image. That's a great image.
It is. I mean, I agree, because I left the election, which was, it feels like a lifetime ago now, and it was not even a full year ago. I left the election feeling so disheartened, is maybe like the lightest word I could give it. And I was feeling like I was unpatriotic. I was like, I hate this and I dislike this and this is America is broken and blah, blah, blah. And I had to teach, I work with high school students in an after school podcast mentoring program. And I had to teach one of my groups online the very next day. And I was struggling. I was not in a good place. And then I was, coming to my teens and I said, okay, so hey, as you know, we had an election last night. Is this something that we need to talk about in this group today? Or are you sick of it and you would rather not talk about it and we just continue with business as usual? Let's take a vote. And the majority of the teens wanted to talk about it. And I was like, okay. And I sort of figured that would be the case. So I, had kind of tried to prepare myself for it. And I was trying to let them speak and have a forum. And to be clear, even though we are in Chicago, several of them were actually quite happy with the election results, which was not the experience that I had the first election round. All of my students were categorically this is the worst thing ever when it was, 45, whatever year that was. But this time around, it was different. There was a split. And I was trying to keep my personal politics out of it because I'm my purpose of facilitating this conversation is not me telling them what to think or what to do or whatever. This is to give them a safe space to talk and not feel they're being told anything. And then, of course, at the end of the conversation, because I had set a timer, I'm we will talk about this for exactly 20 minutes and then we are done. And when the timer went off, somebody said, but Miss Klunder, what do you think? And I was like, oh. And I said, do you actually really want to know what I think? And they were like, yes, we want to know what you think. And as I started talking with them, I was like, I can take the whole rest of this class period to tell you what I think. I got really emotional because I realized that I am not unpatriotic. I do not hate this country. I actually quite love this country. And I actually quite value, as you were saying, Wendy, flawed as it is, imperfect as it is, when I look at other systems of government, when I look at other nations and things like that, there is a lot that we have. There's a lot that some other countries have that I wish we did, healthcare.
Sure.
But there is a lot to love and there is a lot to be proud of. And that stuff didn't just get handed. That stuff was fought for.
Right.
And hard won. And so to take away that which does make our country great makes me furious.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, I just realized how much I love America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's people who are calling Bruce Springsteen unpatriotic right now. It's just they don't get it. He's extremely patriotic. That's why he's saying what he's saying. He's saying, my country is in great danger right now. I value my country. I've sung about my country all these years. Mm-hmm. And right now, we're in danger of losing everything. That's what he's saying. He's not saying, I'm not American. He's not saying that at all.
And that's I saw this also on Instagram or somewhere, Threads or something. Well, and how much of that is real people and how much is bots, I don't know. But, people saying, oh, it's un-American. You protesters are un-American. It's no, we're actually the definition of American.
Yep.
It's ridiculous to say that. But also, I remember that from back in the olden days, the last century, when some of us were still alive, that there was a conservative element that would say the same thing, that the people who were protesting and trying to change the world and our country were doing the wrong thing and that it was un-American. And no, wrong.
No, we're all three very patriotic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a guaranteed right. So that's the whole deal.
So speaking of Bruce Springsteen, never thought that would be a segue that I would.
Bruce, if you're watching this, I've loved you for years.
If you're talking to Sue, you're always going to get into Bruce Springsteen eventually.
I don't know how that is yet.
As artists and musicians, what do you think the role of an artist is in times like this? Some of the guests that I've been talking with, one of the threads that keeps coming up is, you as one individual human being do not have to do everything. You do not necessarily have to protest and volunteer and contribute and call Congress and, be in the streets. And, it can feel overwhelming because it feels like there is so much to do.
Yeah.
But if you can find your role, find your lane, find your wheelhouse, find the thing that you can contribute to your community that moves the needle in some way or makes a difference, then that can be something more tangible and more actionable for people than to think like I have to single-handedly solve the entire nation's problems. How do you feel like artists and music, like how does that fit into the work that's being done?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and I mean, there's so many different things that again, this could have many different answers, and I'd probably agree with all of them because I do think it's important that artists stand up and say and feel and share their feelings about things. And I do think that, I mean, I don't have any platform that, I'm not going to change the world with my feelings or whatever about this, though I'd like to. But I do think that the other thing is, it's just maybe this is the role of the artist all the time, maybe, or one of them. And that is that I think we're sharing and enlightening people about humanity, about our own personal humanity and therefore, the human condition at large. That's to me the most important thing I can do because even if someone disagrees with me politically, they might understand if I open my heart that they also can open their heart. And that's how change happens. That's how communication happens. It doesn't happen by going online and saying, I disagree and you're a jerk. And, even if the person is, that doesn't do anything. It just makes people go, I hate you. But we can do something much more than that, which is something much more profound. And that's, I think, why. That's why I think I'm an artist to begin with. So.
I also think, like, for me, I find it hard in general to react to something while it's happening. So, like, I have written a few songs based on what's happening, but usually, like, I'm still writing about my childhood now, because I can process it. And so I think people think, oh, I've got to be writing a protest song, or I've got to be doing this. Well, if it comes to you, then you should do it. If not, if you write something that moves people in some way, I believe there's like this giant pot. We're all putting in our drops into this giant pot. And then people are putting in poison. So someone puts in a little bit of sweetness and someone puts in a little bit of anger. And, we're all stirring it together. And as long as it's a positive drop, it doesn't matter whether it's a protest song or a piece of beauty or a piece of artwork or a photograph of a bird in nature. I think the job of the artist is to be honest with whatever they're doing. And that will inspire other people. If you're really down and you feel like, oh my God, I can't do anything, maybe you go for a walk in nature, maybe you go see a movie and the movie just inspires you to do something. Or maybe you go to a play and you're like, wow, I hadn't thought of this perspective. So all of the things that artists are doing and creating or gathering people are all important, I think.
Totally.
You're kind of touching on that already, but somebody asked me actually when I was just on a trip in a national park in Colorado and Utah on a river rafting trip, creating a podcast for a client. And everyone who was on this trip that I could tell were all of more progressive, liberal leaning values and all believe that, for example, since we were all in a national park at that time, that the national parks were important and should be conserved and should be saved as national park land and should not be sold and should not be developed and, this and that they were an asset to our country. And as we're having these conversations for the podcast, somebody said, these conversations that we're recording are great, but do you ever just feel like you're preaching to the choir? Like the only people that are going to listen to this podcast are people who already believe that. And I was like, yeah, sometimes I feel that way. And I think largely, yes. But I'm curious, and I had some thoughts on that, which I will reserve for a moment. But I'm curious for you, like, do you ever, we talk about the blue Chicago bubble and how, we're in such a liberal leaning, which is not to say everyone is, but in such a progressive liberal leaning microcosm that sometimes when we go outside of that, even going to the suburbs in some cases where you're like, oh, what Trump signs? Like bumper stickers? Like where am I? Like, take me back to Chicago. I feel safer there, kind of thing. When you put on a show like this, do you feel like you are preaching or singing to the choir, as the case may be? And does it matter if that's the case?
I think in this case, we probably will be. I mean, a family member of mine who will not be mentioned, who's married into the family, this would not be his thing. He's not going to enjoy himself. So why should we force him to come to this when it's not going to change his mind. He's just going to sit there and be irritated. So no, this is probably people are coming going, I want to do something. I want to do something positive. I need my cup refilled. I need my inspiration refilled. How can I resist? What can I do? I don't have a problem with that. If I was performing and I was performing in a place as I have that are, maybe not the bastion of blue, I'm not going to sing my super angry songs because it's not going to convince them. It's just going to turn them off. I will do what I do and I will be honest with what I do, but I'm not going to preach to somebody who's not going to hear me. It's a waste of... No, people might become more interested if you don't do that. They might be more open to it if you're not doing that.
Well, I don't totally agree with that. I mean, I honor your right to do or not do, or of course, but I'm not so worried about, I'd be happy to sing a protest or whatever song, and even before those who don't agree. And I think I have done that. It doesn't matter whether you change their mind or not, but I do think, this goes back to what's the role of the artist. One of those other things that I feel strongly is that, we can get people to think a little bit, and which, Sue, of course, your songs do that, of course. But we can get people to think a little bit outside of their normal, maybe box or whatever, and, scratch their feelings a little.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But also we could talk about issues, and, we're probably, I agree, maybe preaching to the choir, but the choir needs preaching, also, because like you said, Sue, we need lifted up. You need to know you're not alone. We all need to feel that other people are out there doing things, and that there's still people who are, in their humanity and in their beauty of what the world can be. We're still dreaming. We're not done. And that's what I think. That's what I think is the main reason I want to do this. I'm like, I need to not sit here in my apartment and go spinning off into the horrible future that I'm envisioning. And like you said, Andrea, trying to do it all myself. I spent the first 2 months of, at least maybe 3 months of this year feeling like I have to save the world. I don't know what to do, but gotta do it. I was really having a hard time, and then I was like, oh my God, I have to calm down. I'm not going to be able to do anything by myself here. This is a whole, whole thing.
As soon as we started working on this and organizing it, didn't you? I mean, it's not like these other problems have gone away. Don't you feel like better? And
I do.
Yeah, because we're doing something. We're not just sitting here going, oh no, what was me? So we are resisting. Resisting.
And I think to your point too, Wendy, if I'm sitting at home doom scrolling social media, I would believe the worst in humanity, right? Like the algorithm is feeding me the things that will engender fear and outrage because that's what keeps me glued to it. And then to be in person, in community with, people who are, I'm trying real hard not to say things like sane people or, things like that, but people who are aligned with my values and who are, as you say, like dreaming of a better future and who are not giving up, like that is healthier and better for me than seeing this skewed perspective online and on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As well.
For real.
And also the other thing, and I basically, that was kind of my response to the person who was asking me about the podcast and preaching to the choir. And I said, and you also never know. You also never know who is listening for whatever reason, how they got dragged there, how they, clicked on it, how they whatever, for whom they're like, I never thought about that before. And if you are doing your job as an artist, as a storyteller, as a musician, touching on that humanity, touching on those human emotions, the storyteller that you've invited to the show, making that emotional, because, we'd like to think that we are, rational creatures who make decisions based on thinking, but we really don't.
I know I don't.
We really make a lot of our decisions and create our belief systems around feelings.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
around emotions and around experiences. And so you never know who you are going to reach at exactly the right moment where something shifts in their mind, even just like a little bit. And so if only that is that one person, I think it's still worth it.
And
Totally.
I agree. And I hope that I didn't say, like, I certainly didn't mean people who don't agree aren't welcome, because they are welcome. But this particular family member, I don't think that would be the case. I don't know. If someone asks me my opinion, I'm always happy to tell them. But if I already know, whatever.
I
You're
mean,
right.
I have those family members too. I'm from Kansas. um, I got them. I get that too. I mean, there are some people that you just know that's a lost cause. We're not going to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, if
And
they
that's
bring it
different.
up, that's different.
Yeah. And I think that there's, more effective or less effective communication. As a communication professional, there are more effective and less effective communication strategies or, ways of relating with people who are in different places and, at different stages in their
Right.
belief system. And so, yeah, you're not going to try to hammer a screw into a piece of wood. It's just not an effective use of anyone's time. So I think that makes total sense to me.
Sure.
I do want to ask, so we talked a little bit about how the idea for 50 Shades of Blue came about. We talked about how the roster of talent came to be. How and why Democracy Forward? I think a lot of times we're thinking, okay, I have a little bit of money to contribute. I would like to support, progressive democratic values. I would like to, be of assistance where I can, but there's so many choices of where I could send my money or where I could volunteer or who I could align with. How did you come to Democracy Forward?
We
How did we?
researched. We
We did.
researched a lot of places. We were thinking about local. We were thinking about national. We were thinking about large organizations. And I don't remember which one of us found Democracy Forward, as far as, like, there's so many, like you said, there's just so many good ones to do. And I think what we both really liked about this is that they're an organization that brings in other people, and they're trying to use legality and law to uphold our Constitution and fight the insanity when people are totally breaking it. And so it just seems right now that the branch of law is able to stop some of these things. And because they're doing all these coalitions, their website explained it really well. Defend, disrupt, and build. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to defend democracy, disrupt the people that are breaking it, and build coalitions of people who are. So we just felt it was a good organization.
Yeah. And I like the fact that they're focused on the executive branch, at least right now, and the overreach, et cetera. They're focused on that, trying to help do something about it. And so that is another aspect of it that I think is really great.
And kind of a little detour from that, we did mention briefly protests and, action in the streets, so to speak. And you both have attended some Chicago protests. I have not, full disclosure. I have not been to any, but somebody said to me, this is going to sound funny, but they were like, because I was debating whether the protest was like the day after I had just gotten back from this river trip, and I was like exhausted and I was feeling so tired and beaten down. And they were like, it's okay if you skip it. They're like, protesting is for the kids anyway. It's for the younger generation who are able to run if they need to. And I was like, excuse me, wait a second, hold on here.
What's interesting at this last one, the No Kings one, is it was more multi-generational. The ones that, Wendy and I were at, and some earlier ones, it seemed like it was more people who are used to doing the marches. And I was like, where's all the young people? Aren't they involved in this? And And this time there were families and there were people of all different colors and there was people, and it was focused on one thing, the no kings. We're not having a king here. We're not having a ruler, and clever signs, but there were people, it was just felt much more open and it was packed. And I'm minorly claustrophobic and short. And so there were some things that I did have a problem with. I was like, gotta get out of here. Gotta break through here. It was a little, but then we moved and we were marching and everything like that. But no, it's not everybody's thing. And like we're saying, there's all different ways to help. It doesn't have to be just one way. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes something else is going on in your life. You cannot be at that particular place. Doesn't mean you're not participating. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't make this last one. I've been to a bunch of them earlier in the year, especially when it was cold out and I was hating the fact that I was there. But but I was feeling it very passionately, and I'm still feeling it passionately, but I also have to earn a living and I have a lot of students on Saturdays. So Saturdays are tricky for me. And I didn't do this last one, but I was obsessed with it and watching it online. I was like, what's happening? I gotta see. I was thrilled to see what the turnout was, though, this past one.
And mostly like turnout, but also to my understanding, like fairly peaceful. Yeah. Like fairly, there's a narrative that's even in LA. I was hearing from some of my friends who live in LA who went to check it out and they were like, the mainstream media coverage is blown out of proportion. It is not, it's like a very small area where there's some chaos. It's very under control. Like it's not the majority of what is actually happening. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that the organizations that have been prevalent in organizing all of this stuff, that's their thing is to say, this is peaceful. And that's been criticized also. Oh, no, that's not going to change anything. Well, I don't agree with that. But we know through history that peaceful protest can change the world.
Yeah.
But the giant numbers of people really makes a big difference. So I was very happy about that.
Yes. And I think it wasn't even necessarily all people who voted not for 47. I think there were probably some people who did vote for him. I think a lot more people are just wanting to get involved and say, no, this is not what we voted for. There was a line of police and we were like, thank you for your service as we're marching. And one of them gave me this flower that someone had given him. It was like, oh, it's just like,
nice.
Not that it was a love fest or anything like that, but I felt like we were well protected and that people were all getting along. People were really well behaved. Yeah, people, maybe the mainstream is looking for that little bit of trouble just so they have something to talk about. But I think the thing to talk about is how many people were coming to these and how well organized they were. Yeah.
Indeed.
So again, the show that's coming up is Sunday, June 29th in Chicago. And it's called 50 Shades of Blue, The Resistance Sings. And we'll be linking to it in the description. And also, I had Wendy Parman's URL up on the screen for her voice studio. She is, well, what do you do, Wendy? What's your day job when you're not being an activist?
Well, that's hilarious. I'm a voice teacher. That's my main day job. Obviously, I'm a singer, actor. Also doing a lot of writing these days and some storytelling. So, I like to spread the net out, do all the creative things.
Wendy's website is wendyparmanvoice.com. And also Sue Fink. Sue's website is suefink.com.
And all the performers' names are listed on our 50 Shades of Blue ticketing website. It shows up all their names and links.
One last question before we part ways. It's kind of a big question, so hopefully not too big for the end of the episode. How and or why do you keep going in moments when it does feel hopeless or overwhelming?
How can you not?
I was going to say, I don't even think of it as an option. I was just thinking like with COVID, when they said everything was closing down, I was like, oh my God. I'm not going to have to feel guilty about sitting at home reading books. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. What about social? So we created the Virtual Dream Cafe. So it was like a Zoom show with multiple performers, kind of like on the screen here, where each person would do a song and we had audience, we had community. And I was like, that's great. It's not the same as being live. So as soon as we could go live, I stopped. It's like, what do? Well, you can get depressed for a while and you can cry and you can bemoan. And I think that's all part of it. I think to not do that is not natural. But then you say, okay, now what can I do to feel better? And then you do the thing that makes you feel better. That's what you do.
I agree. Yeah. It's better to do something than to not do something. I certainly don't want to be the person that, isn't going to do anything because they feel hopeless. It's understandable to feel hopeless. And I think it comes in waves.
Yes.
When I pick up the whatever and see the latest news and I'm like, I thought the worst thing that could happen has happened, but no, it turns out there's 5 more worse things right here today. It's unbelievable. But on the other hand, you do have to remember that humankind has been going on for a while now, and there's always going to be a struggle. I think that's the whole point of probably existence, is to keep going.
Why do we always have to defend the good values? Wouldn't the good values be the ones that people want? But it's not. When overwhelmed, I tend to go for walks in nature, and I hear the birds, I see the trees, and I take pictures, and I'm like, look at this big, beautiful world. You go out, it's the strawberry moon, howl at the moon, no one's going to hear you. Take your pictures, which never turn out. And you're like, look at the beautiful world. There's Jupiter. I know this Jupiter because my app tells me it's Jupiter. Otherwise, it just looks like a dot. And it just kind of puts things in perspective and helps you to go on. I think that too.
Yeah, that's another reason we need this, because we need our world.
Yeah. We need to fight for our world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wendy and Sue, thank you so much for joining me on the Creative Imposter special series, Creativity and Media as Resistance. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Viewers, I keep saying listeners because I'm used to audio podcasts. I'm like, well, now they are listeners, but they are also viewers. Well, audience of all kinds.
Multitasking.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please come howl at the moon with us in Chicago if you happen to be around for the show. And if not, look for ways that you can come together in your community. Look for ways that you can contribute, that you can take action and support your local artists and musicians and get through this time together. I'm just going to end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. This was great.
The Creative Imposter is produced, hosted, and edited by me, Andrea Klunder. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong. Links to events and resources are in the show notes. And this week, I'm encouraging you to find one way you can use your voice to amplify the changes you want to make happen.